Darth Vader and Emperor Palpatine's relationship is one of the most compelling dynamics in all of Star Wars. It is a story layered with manipulation, ambition, loyalty, and betrayal. A bond forged in fire, shattered by the weight of the Sith philosophy. In Legends, Vader's journey from his subservient apprentice to an aspiring usurper is one of tragedy and intrigue. It is defined by his slow realization of Palpatine's weaknesses and his ongoing ambitions. However, his attempt to overthrow his master were hampered by a combination of internal doubt, external manipulation, and Palpatine's carefully laid out plans to ensure his own supremacy. Vader's views of Palpatine's weaknesses. Vader was no fool. He recognized certain vulnerabilities in Palpatine over time. These observations formed the foundation of his plan to eventually overthrow his master. Here are some of the key weaknesses that Vader perceived in Palpatine: arrogance and overconfidence. Palpatine was a master manipulator and the most powerful Sith in galactic history. However, his arrogance often blinded him to the potential of others, including Darth Vader. Palpatine believed his control over the galaxy, and Vader was unshakable and absolute. While this hubris can be a strength when consolidating power, it had now become a potential vulnerability. Vader knew that Palpatine underestimated his cunning and his willingness to rebel, which he would exploit in the future. He also noticed Palpatine's fear of mortality, an obsession with immortality. Palpatine's constant pursuit of eternal life was another key vulnerability of his. His experiments with rituals, darkside artifacts, and cloning technology betrayed a fear of morality that Vader found exploitable. If Palpatine's plans for immortality could be disrupted, his power could be diminished, leaving him vulnerable to a decisive strike. Dependency on rituals and old Sith magic. Palpatine's power was enhanced by his mastery of ancient Sith lore. While this knowledge made him very dangerous, it also created a reliance on external sources of power. Lord Vader believed that he could turn these tools against his master, mastering similar artifacts or uncovering weaknesses in Palpatine's reliance on them. Vader also saw Palpatine as physically frail. Despite his overwhelming strength in the Force, Palpatine was physically very old. His reliance on the Force to mask this weakness meant that this was a direct confrontation that Vader could exploit, and if the Force were somehow neutralized or subverted, Palpatine would be at a huge disadvantage. Vader's own brute strength and combat prowess gave him confidence that, under the right circumstances, he could overthrow his master physically. Isolation and paranoia. Palpatine's obsession with maintaining control created isolation and mistrust among those that were closest to him. He intentionally kept his subordinates divided, ensuring that no one would unite. Vader saw this as a weakness though, and if he could rally the right allies or apprentices, he could shatter Palpatine's web of control. But why did it take Vader so long to act? Vader's path to rebellion against Palpatine was neither straightforward nor was it immediate. It took nearly 2 decades for Vader to formulate any real plans to move against his master, and even then, his attempts were cautious and filled with setbacks. This delay can be attributed to several factors though: his emotional and his physical brokenness. Following his defeat on Mustafar, Anakin Skywalker was physically maimed and emotionally shattered. Stripped of his connection to Padme and his former life, Vader saw himself as nothing more than a shadow of what he could have been. Palpatine capitalized on this brokenness, convincing Vader that he was dependent on his master for survival and purpose. For years, Vader accepted this narrative, believing that he was unworthy of any independence. He had lost that right. Vader also began developing, though, a comfort in his own power. Before the Rebel Alliance united, Vader found a measure of stability and purpose as the Emperor's enforcer. His role as the executor of Palpatine's will gave him power, fear, and dominion over the galaxy. While the Sith philosophy demanded that apprentices rise up against their masters, Vader became complacent, clinging to only the remaining sense of purpose that he had left. But now, let's talk about Palpatine's manipulation. Palpatine was a master of psychological warfare, and he used Vader's insecurities in order to keep him in check. By hampering his apprentice's abilities, both physically and with the restrictions of his suit as well as mentally, attacking him with words, this was able to hold Vader back momentarily, to keep him subservient. He also planted seeds of doubt, making Vader believe that rebellion was futile because Palpatine embodied the dark side. He also had a lack of opportunity though. For much of his early time as Vader, there was no real viable opportunities to challenge Palpatine without a strong ally or apprentice, or an external threat to the Empire. Any rebellion would have been suicidal. It wasn't until the rise of the Rebel Alliance and the discovery of Luke that Vader began to see a path forward. Vader's ultimate plan to overthrow Palpatine took a long time, but he did have one. Despite these many challenges, Vader eventually began to formulate plans to overthrow his master. His strategies were multifaceted, reflecting his cunning and his growing ambition for power. Vader too relied on Sith artifacts for a moment in the lore, as well as plagues. In Legends continuity, Vader delved into ancient Sith lore, searching for tools and rituals that could be used against Sidious. Vader sought out artifacts that could amplify his own power, or more importantly, disrupt his masters. Plagues and darkside curses, which bypassed direct combat, were particularly appealing to him, as this allowed Vader to strike at Palpatine's health and his vitality. Training a worthy apprentice was also another option. Vader's most notable attempt to challenge Palpatine involved training a secret apprentice by the name of Galen Marek. Starkiller was intended to be a weapon of a powerful sort, which would help Vader overthrow his master, likened to a bomb. However, Starkiller's unexpected independence and eventual betrayal derailed this entire plan, forcing Vader to start over. He also planned, though, on exploiting the Rebel Alliance. Vader saw potential in the Rebel Alliance as a destabilizing force. By weakening the Empire's infrastructure, the rebellion could inadvertently create opportunities for Vader to strike at Palpatine's heart. This reflected in the Force Unleashed game, where Vader uses Starkiller to secretly unite various rebel factions to weaken the Empire. And then we have Luke. The discovery of Luke was the catalyst for Vader's most serious attempt to overthrow Palpatine. Vader believed that with his son, that they would become a powerful force that could finally take back the Empire, finally defeat his master. This plan came to a head in Empire Strikes Back, where Vader attempted to sway Luke into joining him. But now, we must look at Palpatine's manipulation of Vader. Palpatine was not blind to Vader's ambition. In fact, he encouraged them to some extent, seeing rebellion as a natural part of the Sith philosophy and its evolution. However, he did take steps to ensure that any such rebellion would ultimately fail. He took steps in limiting Vader's own power. By designing Vader's suit to be restrictive and painful, Palpatine ensured that Vader would never reach his full potential. The suit made Vader slower, vulnerable, forcing him to rely on the dark side to compensate. He also used psychological torment. Palpatine constantly reminded Vader of his many failures, particularly on Mustafar. This kept Vader in a state of self-loathing and dependency on his master. Palpatine also took steps in creating rivalries. Palpatine kept Vader isolated by fostering mistrust and competition within the Empire. Palpatine often hinted at replacing Vader with a stronger apprentice such as Luke Skywalker or Starkiller, doing all of this to keep Vader on edge. At one point, he even told Vader that he could move away from the Sith philosophy entirely, and that maybe Vader, along with the Sith, had become obsolete. But now we have to look at the tragedy of Vader's rebellion. Ultimately, Vader's attempts to overthrow Palpatine were unsuccessful until the events of Return of the Jedi. His failure is attributed to a combination of his own doubt, Palpatine's meticulous planning, and the inherent flaws of the Sith philosophy as well as his suit. This all fosters betrayal, but punishes those that attempt it. Despite this though, Vader came very close to success on many occasions, far closer than many realize. His raw power combined with his strategic mind made him a legitimate threat to Palpatine. If he had persisted or found a stronger apprentice, it's possible that he would have succeeded. However, by the time of his redemption, Vader had come to believe that Palpatine was the embodiment of the dark side, an unstoppable force that he could never hope to defeat alone. And he was right. At least Lord Vader could never defeat Palpatine. In the end, it was not power though, but love that would save Luke and would save Anakin. It was love that allowed Vader to break free of Palpatine's control. This act of redemption was not only rejection of the dark side, but the ultimate defiance of everything that Palpatine stood for. In the end though, it is true that Darth Vader came so much closer to defeating Palpatine and was a true rival, so much more than many give him credit for. But as always, my friends, what are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on Vader's plans to overthrow Palpatine, why they failed, and why it took him so long to try? And as always, my friends, thank you so much for stopping by the archives, and may the Force be with you.